Okay, everybody, welcome back to In Progress. This is our weekly roundtable discussion of the political stories and issues and ideas that are top of mind for progressive folks across the Lone Star State as we begin to head for the weekend. My name is Chris Mosier. I'm the communications director here at Progress, Texas. You may be hearing us on the radio in Houston, and that's cool. We've just begun a brand new time slot on KPFT 90.1 FM every Friday morning at 10, and that's about to change. But we'll tell you more about that at the end of the show. I feel like we're being promoted, actually, just a little bit. About us here at Progress, Texas, we're a statewide nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. We operate a major digital network, including social media, podcasts, legacy media, and more, reaching millions of people across the Lone Star State. In Progress is also heard on Sundays on KPFT HD2 every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. This week, joined by Advocacy and Development Coordinator Tatum Owens.
Hey there, howdy. Thanks, y'all.
We are joined also by Kathleen Thompson, our Executive Director and Boss Lady. Hi, Kathleen.
Hey, folks.
And it's spring break. It must be spring break because Haley Smith is here. Haley Smith is our Digital Associate. Hi, Haley.
Hi, y'all. Happy to be here finally again.
Haley has had her In Progress schedule interrupted by this really inconvenient class schedule that she has on Thursdays. But
inconvenient is what I'd call it.
we're being patient because education is so very important. So this weekend we will all four be engaged in something that is a ton of fun, something that should be interesting to anyone who is interested in politics, especially at a moment where we've seen gigantic turnout in the primaries. People are very, very much engaged, either out of a fired up nature to fight back or out of fear, which we'll talk a bit about that as well. There are many different motivations for being more interested in politics lately. But the county conventions that are happening in every correct me if I'm wrong. Does every single county, all 254 of them, do they all have a convention? Kathleen, do you know, like even Loving County, does Loving County have a party convention?
So every county convention should be meeting on Saturday, March 21st. Mm-hmm. Some Democrats will come together in a congressional district. Say if there's a really specific hot election that's a contested primary. I know Congressional District 24 will have their own congressional district.
Okay.
But all of the county parties that have chairs that are active should be having their county conventions this coming Saturday, March 21st.
That's right.
And down to the very small counties, I ran into a lady who knew Progress, Texas, something totally unrelated, and she's a county chair south of Fort Worth. And I was saying, how many people are you expecting? And she's like, I think we're going to get about 60. I'm like, awesome.
Great.
Do you have people coming in who are statewide, or do you have messages from them that you can share? And she said the messages route. So people who voted en masse for the March primary before the May primary runoffs gather every 2 years at the county convention level or congressional district level to do the party business ahead of the state convention in the summer.
Right. That's in June.
Right.
Which at this point is scheduled for Corpus Christi. Of course, we'll see if they still have water.
Right.
When June comes
things
around.
are booked. Bring your own water. That sounds really scary and something that was entirely preventable.
Right. And
by Republicans in charge of Texas.
And I sure don't mean to make light of that. That's actually a really real serious threat that we've talked about, of course, a lot on our podcast down in Corpus. Tatum, talk a bit about. I'm presuming that you know a little bit about kind of as Kathleen alluded, the business that gets taken care of by the parties. What precisely happens along that line? What are they deciding, and where does it go from there? Of course, it goes to the state convention, but what's the design? How does it work?
So you can think of it as a democratic forum, and I mean that with the little d, so democracy. It allows all the different delegates there to provide a chance to have their voice heard as their delegation for that county. You can draft resolutions that pass later on at the state convention. So basically, it's just the first step in the long trail this year to have the people in each county have their voices heard. and just other kind of business too, like adding people to committees or caucuses or signing up and trying to join in wherever you can. Yeah.
Right. Committees. The resolutions committee is going to meet. The rules committee is going to meet. The nominations committee is going to meet. Back in ye olden times, we had the Texas two-step, which was a caucus like Iowa, and then a primary like other states. And we had a special waiver from the DNC that allowed us to have the Texas two-step. And now we're just a primary state, but it used to be that caucuses were held right after voting on election night at the church or school or wherever the library you were meeting for voting. And then those people who wanted to be delegates onto the county convention or congressional district convention would have to go from their precinct convention to their county convention. And now folks going to the county convention will go to the state convention as delegates.
I think of this as both a terrific thing to do for someone who might be super wonky and super involved, like we're talking about. If you're, if you've perhaps explored becoming a precinct chair, or if you have, had been a delegate of any sort of official capacity at all, within the Democratic Party of your area where you're operating, then obviously this is something you're interested in. But I would say, as I said at the top, if just people who are beginning to politically awaken, as it were, if you're, really just starting to look around and just starting to get interested in politics, especially if you're interested in the Democratic side of things, lots and lots to be learned and lots of fun to see. And so our plan here at Progress Texas, we're going to be splitting into twos here. The four of us on this call, in fact, are heading two different directions. Tatum and Kathleen are going to be heading for McKinney, Texas for the Collin County convention, and we'll talk a bit more about that. But Haley and I are heading for the biggest city in Texas, the most diverse city in Texas. Very much, I would say, these days, the Democratic stronghold of Texas is Houston and the Harris County Democratic Party convention. Haley and I, we have plans. And
we have plans.
So we will be set up in the convention kind of vendor area, where you're going to see a lot of different advocacy groups and a lot of different causes that will be represented there. Look forward to seeing all the super interesting stuff. There's a definite possibility that Haley and I might be the most obnoxious set of people in there. Haley, lay on them a little bit what we're planning to do at the Harris County Democratic Convention.
Well, I won't spoil too much. We'll be having a cool table with even cooler merch and cool people. Have some cool conversations with your, can I say that? With your favorite progressive? Yeah, okay. Some cool conversations with your favorite progressive organization. I'm just really excited to meet people, and so much of our job is online, and Chris seeing you and seeing all the fans and coming to say hi. It's just, Beto O'Rourke is going to be there.
Yeah.
Reason enough. But
so Beto is part of the spoken part. And that's something that, different conventions are done in different ways in different counties. The one in Harris, I think, is likely probably the biggest one. I'm told about 1,500 is the expected attendance, or that's how many people have RSVP'd for it anyway, which, by the way, it is open to the public. RSVP is required. The spoken part also includes Adam Kinzinger, who is a Woodlands native now, former Republican, prominent in the January 6th committee, has very much come over to the light side, shall we say.
Lost his job for doing the right thing.
That's right. That's exactly right. Exactly right. They drummed him out of that place for doing the right thing. So a terrific lineup of speakers. And so there is both, again, the wonky Democratic Party business stuff that's going on, but there's also tons and tons to learn and see and do and explore and be a part of.
Yeah, one of the things that Jeff Hilton, he's the executive director for the convention. He spoke with us earlier this week on the podcast, and they're going to have lots of different breakout sessions. That's kind of a normal thing. Like you do wherever your county convention is, you can expect to run into some information sessions and institutional knowledge from local community leaders. So that's always an exciting part of this piece. But at the Harris County Democratic Convention specifically, they'll be having breakout sessions with judicial candidates. And of course, the courts have been left out largely of the conversation this year, even though so much of democracy is at stake, specifically in the courts. And we also recorded with Democracy Forward's president and CEO, Skye Perryman, earlier this week. So if that's something you're interested in, we do have that episode breaking down why the courts matter during 2026 amid all of the rest of the chaos. So
absolutely. We talk a lot, a very central theme for us at Progress Texas is, how folks can step up their game, how folks can do even more than what they might already be doing. And that can be, sometimes get kind of difficult to determine, what do you want to do next? How do you want to step it up? And your nearby county convention is a perfect opportunity to it's almost like a job fair in that way. It's like, let's look around at all the different things we could possibly do.
I just love getting to meet people from all over the state. And we have not been in Collin County in years. And we were just in Harris County last year, but before that, it had been some time. So it's nice to get off of just the San Antonio, Austin, Dallas corridor and to meet new people and to make new friends and to have people say, I listen to you every morning. And we say, why? And just to hear back from people what they like and what they think we might do better or what they really love about Progress Texas. So it's always great to hear those stories and to meet people in person. And it's going to be a great time.
Let's talk a second about Collin County, which of course is one of those rapidly growing suburban areas that are all over Texas in the periphery of every major city in our state. You have rapidly purpling and bluing areas that are right on the periphery of those big urban centers. Collin County definitely fits that description. Collin County also happens to be the home of one Ken Paxton, which is very, very interesting to me to have his neighborhood possibly changing under his very feet, which is a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, he can always go to his 2 rental properties in Austin if things get a little too blue for him.
Well, I think he's got property all over the country from what last I heard, as long as if he still has all those different houses and whatnot.
If Angela doesn't get him.
Yeah.
I've heard he's allowing her nothing in the divorce settlement. What I've heard.
My goodness.
He says she deserves nothing. And I think they've been married for something like 28, 30 years, something like that.
A long time they've been causing chaos, yeah.
And she deserves nothing. So very, very interesting. So the conventions are going to be a lot of fun. Let's shift to this other story that's been a big deal this week. And this is not an easy one for progressive people to talk about. But I do notice that progressive people across the state are talking about it and are reckoning with it and are reconciling with it. And of course, we're talking about the revelations about civil rights labor legend, I would say, Cesar Chavez. It's been reported, and we've all heard the story, most of us have by now, that Cesar Chavez back in the day groomed and assaulted young girls and women during his leadership of the United Farm Workers. Most notably, co-founder Dolores Huerta, who is 96. Wowzers. She has been silent about this for 6 decades. Dolores disclosed just in the last few days that Cesar Chavez, years ago in the 60s, pressured and raped her, resulting in 2 pregnancies, resulting in 2 children who were then raised by other families. Huerta has stated that she initially remained silent to protect the farm worker movement from collapse under the weight of what would have been a scandal, obviously resulting from this coming out publicly. There's been a lot of response, both on the left and on the right. I'm noticing very, very serious differences in the way that the left and the right have responded to this story. Kathleen, kick to you, your thoughts and your feelings upon this really hard to digest news.
Yeah, it's horrible. And I think that I share the anger and sadness for all of the sexual abuse survivors and want them to be treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve, and really appreciate their bravery in speaking up now. And of course, you can see why they didn't want to, but I do appreciate the love and well wishes that progressives across the country are sending these women and all survivors, and reminding people about the rampant sexual abuse of women and children in our country that really had a backlash in the Me Too movement. And so many people saying that they were a victim too, and having a reckoning at churches, the Boy Scouts.
So many different institutions across the country. Absolutely. I think it was an international movement. That was powerful, having people speak up. Something that was frustrating to see on Twitter, I'm sorry that I'm still on there. There was questions about why now? Why now? Which I think also begs the question from that person or that point of view, like, why ever, right? Like, why taint his legacy? Why do that? Well, something that is broached in the New York Times expose that brought out, of course, Dolores Huerta's comments. It was a Facebook post that she released her statements in, was that these survivors' statements came about because one of the survivors had her street being proposed to be changed to Cesar Chavez Avenue or street or drive. And I can't imagine the pain that would cause seeing your own abuser's name, living on your abuser's street name. Just imagine that. And, I'm joining here from Austin, where I'm wondering what's going to happen with the street that's named after him today. It's not about one person's legacy. And another thing that I've seen on that note is people's inclination to jump to renaming all of these streets Dolores Huerta, which she explicitly says in her statement, don't make it about one person. This is not an individualistic movement. It's a collectivist movement. It is about everybody working against violence together. And that's why we can't jump to that first inclination of let's just go find the next easiest person that will be this over figurehead for everything that we care about. And people are fallible, as we've seen time and time again, whether you're progressive or Republican or whatever movement you are part of, people are imperfect. And it is so devastating to see that these survivors have had to suppress their own stories for decades in the name of, for one thing, probably keeping them safe, because women always experience backlash when they do come out as survivors. This is just a fact. But also for, as they've stated, for the movement, because they understand that humans love stories and they love having that figurehead. But that doesn't mean that we can all flock to just this one person, because people are given power and sometimes they abuse it.
My heart goes out to all of the women that have had to suffer in silence for the reputation of men who are supposed to be better. And I think the response that we're seeing now, because I've also seen people saying that, we should name it after her instead. But I think overwhelmingly the response has been, no, this is about the farm workers and what they've sacrificed. And we need to recenter the values of dignity and justice that they fought for. And I think the response between what this horrifying news that we're receiving now and the months and months and months of trying to pretend like the Epstein files don't exist from people on the other side is, every time I feel like we talk about the Epstein files on here, I'm just at a loss for words. But it is so surreal and sickening and shocking every single day to wake up. And we all know that there is evidence that there's a pedophile cabal running our country, and there's just nothing being done about it. Meanwhile, progressives are coming together and confronting sometimes the dark and really unpleasant parts of our own history and our own leaders, and being able to reckon with that. And I think that means there are people that are learning and there are people that are choosing to stay ignorant. And I think that is going to be what decides movements going forward.
So yeah, I agree with all of that for sure. And what I notice coming from the right, and specifically Governor Abbott, is this attempt to point to a clearly deeply flawed man back in the 1960s, who also happened to be at the forefront of some terrific things to happen in the name of collectivist labor, and the working people of this country, up against corporations, and a struggle that, of course, continues now. Abbott would have us believe that the failings of this one individual man somehow undermine progressivism in general, somehow undermine, the virtues of union building, which of course is complete garbage nonsense for sure. And so I notice really, some of the first voices I saw speaking out, really even before Governor Abbott said anything about it, were people like Gina Hinojosa and people like Joaquin Castro, who were immediately out with, this is unacceptable. We must reckon with this. We must, publicly and openly, grapple with this terrible revelation that we've had come down the pike. As opposed, as you guys have talked about, instead of folks on the other side of the political aisle who continue to wear their red hats, emblazoned with the name of a man. And I didn't realize this until Kathleen mentioned it a couple of days ago, that Donald Trump's name appears in the Epstein files with a frequency second only to Jeffrey Epstein himself. And so if that can be ignored, if something like that with such a preponderance of evidence can be swept away, can be not only ignored, but very publicly and very blatantly suppressed in terms of investigations, in terms of actual inquiries into what's happened, the releasing of files. There still remain to this day files from the Epstein files specific to Donald Trump that have still not been released. And everyone knows this. And so all of this, by the way, back to the top of the conversation about the county conventions and getting involved and getting, really engaged in your democracy, the midterm elections, if a change of hands happens in control of the House of Representatives and possibly even the Senate, that tune's going to change real fast. And a lot of things are going to change real fast. And so that's what makes all of this so very, very important.
I'm going to bring it back to your point on Greg Abbott, because I also saw that statement, and you can tell his agenda within that, right? It's like we have to suppress the he calls it the myth of the progressive folk hero, which to me, I'm like, there's so many different examples.
Right.
I feel like you can't call that a myth. That is just like history, which brings me to my point. Censorship in our public education system. Of course, Greg Abbott is going to take the first chance he can, albeit all of the other pieces of this story, to change a narrative about U.S. history, especially regarding people of color in Texas, in the U.S. And we've seen this time and time again in our legislature with his commands, his mandate to put out any mention of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion in our education system. Because when people are bought into this narrative that people of color are not part of our history, and that if they were, that actually they didn't have any impact. That's what he's trying to say in that tweet.
It's I'm drawing from a quote from a movie whose name I can't remember now, but a really goofy history professor who says something really, I think poignant, which is history is not only the story of the past. History gives us the reasons for the present. History explains the present. And so if we take parts of our history and ignore them, whether it's out of our own convenience or our own comfort, we're getting an incomplete story. We are not understanding our present properly if we don't grapple with every single different aspect of our past and our history. It's really, I have a history degree, actually. I have a BA from Haley, and I both are Texas State Bobcats. And Haley is actually studying political science right now. Haley, talk about that as someone who's in the thick of it right now, who's, learning all this stuff right now. About the push and pull of, things that we wish hadn't happened, but they did, and how we have to deal with that.
Greg Abbott's response and everything behind it is the same reason why they're taking out slavery from museums and textbooks.
Right.
And to me, the story of America is filled with dark moments like that, like slavery and Jim Crow, and gay marriage wasn't even legal until the last 10 years. We have always struggled to be a more perfect union, but I think what makes America so beautiful and so special is that despite these dark moments, we still are striving for equality and justice and freedom and the things that we fought for to find this country. And I still think our country can be those things, but we have to reconcile with those things. We can't just ignore them because, like it or not, these are tax-paying citizens too. Every person has a history. Our country has a history. And if we just try to ignore it and pretend like reality is something that it isn't, we'll never get to where we're going. And there's a large segment of this country that would rather live in blissful ignorance. But I am not one of those people. You guys are not those people. And the people listening are not those people. And I think we can be better, but we need to really look at ourselves in the mirror and find what we need to do. But I think we can.
Absolutely. In historiography, the actual science of history, will tell you that things that happened fairly recently, things that have happened, the Trump 2.0, for example, is not yet history because we don't yet know the implications moving forward of what's happening right now. But I think it's difficult to argue that what's happening over in the Middle East right now is absolutely going to have a giant impact on our history moving forward. We sure shouldn't close out without some mention of the fact that American soldiers are now dying, that Middle Eastern civilians by the hundreds and thousands are now dying. And no one seems to be able to come up with a really strong reason why all this started. Anybody want to weigh in on what's happening real quick over in the Middle East?
Can I just say, like, I was a kid during the Bush administration, but even I'm getting a sense of deja vu. Like, it's a pointless war. Nobody wants it except for the people at the top of the executive branch.
Yeah, Americans are dying because the president doesn't want you to talk about the Epstein files. And Mike Johnson shut down Congress because he doesn't want you to talk about the Epstein files. And most recently up here in North Texas, the pastor of one of the largest churches, Gateway Church, was accused of sexual abuse. And instead of doing what Democrats and progressives did yesterday within hours of condemning it, blamed the victim. Well, she was a child who wanted it.
Yeah, amazing.
She led him on. She's a child.
Amazing.
This didn't happen. You're trying to hurt the church. So what's happening in the Middle East is a diversion and a distraction. And President Trump never went to war. Deferments, bone spurs. He's not sending any of his sons to go fight this war that is killing Americans and injuring Americans. We have hundreds injured already. And this can be stopped by people who make the president and the people who support him and the people who are trying to make him escape accountability actually have consequences, real consequences.
Let's all remember that this was the No New Wars pro-peace ticket.
That's right.
Not even a year ago. And we're in Iran, again, for no reason other than to distract you. People are dying, and that's the cost that they're okay with paying.
And the cost I saw before we joined the call was from the Washington Post, has an exclusive that says the Pentagon is asking the White House to approve a more than $200 billion request to fund the war in Iran, according to an administration official. Folks, that's your healthcare money.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's your education money. That's your roads and bridges money.
That's your Social Security. It's really easy. I think the Epstein file is absolutely the center of it, but there is a point where the average person just can't take any more of this kind of news, and your impulse is to turtle up. Your impulse is to do something else. We would, of course, encourage you to take good care of your mental health and take care of your physical health and all of those things, but this is not the time to look away. This is not the time to close your eyes and tune out. Although, the picture gets uglier and uglier as we continue to look, but there is potential salvation coming up this fall in November, and we can all be a part of that. And I sure hope that you, dear listener, will be part of that as well. Guys, thanks so much for joining us again for In Progress this week. Haley Smith and Tatum Owens and Kathleen Thompson, thank you guys so very much. Progress Texas is a statewide nonprofit rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions while campaigns come and go. We're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. In Progress also airs on KPFT Radio in Houston, 90.1 FM HD2 every Sunday morning at 11 a.m. And more info is available on the radio station at kpft.org, and more info on us at Progress Texas can be found at progresstexas.org.